Howdy everyone, it's me once again, the one and only Killer Rodan. And today, I still have more kaiju films to review, folks. So the film I'm reviewing is the one titled Ghidorah, Three-Headed Monster. And it's the fifth entry of the original Godzilla series. Yes, of course, I'm going to be speaking about the Japanese version of this film because if something is intended to be a certain way, leave it alone. So, yeah. Just to be more exact, the edition I'm referring to specifically is this one. And this one does contain the Japanese and the English dub version. But the thing is that I do find kind of weird is that in the US version, that's the only way you can have the auto commentary. The auto commentary is not available in the Japanese version, which is pretty stupid. Yeah, it's just the original Japanese trailer, slideshow, and yeah, there's a few behind the scenes stuff. You get to learn a bit brief history of the film itself. Okay, not exactly maybe the movie, maybe the some things aspect of the franchise, but there's not a whole lot behind the scenes when it comes to this film, which is pretty disappointing when you think about it. There's only one disc for this edition. It's been digitally remastered, so the picture quality is actually really good, and the sound quality is also very nicely done as well. So, yeah, of course, that's definitely at least a good sign. At least the movie itself does have good quality in the picture and the audio. So, and yes, it does have English subtitles for anyone who doesn't know. If you don't mind purchasing this edition of the Japanese version, I mean, sure, if you don't mind paying the hefty price for it. Oh, believe me, folks, I've looked around. The prices for this version I'm referring to, this edition really goes really up there. So, I mean, if you want to keep looking around anyway, be my guest, but I would suggest staying from the used copies because the used copies can, be a bad idea. I bought a used copies before when it comes to video games, and I got burned in that case. So, yeah, thank you for my experience. And if you're gonna buy used for whatever reason, maybe because of financial reasons, or you don't have like an online account, or just being paranoid by that, because a lot of people do get their identity stolen. And if you are gonna get a used copy, at least go to like a place like a DD's or Goodwill, um, or maybe a Rasputin, and because at least you can be at the store and you can look at the disc to see if it's not scratched or anything. And if it is, you can just put it right back on the shelf or whatever, and just keep looking around. So at least that's the bright side of that. But anyway, this would have marked the first time in the franchise that they brought in the whole sci-fi element into it, really. Which I guess does make sense because the producer of these films, Tanaka, the original producer of these films anyway, always felt that he didn't really want to constantly repeat the same plot line over and over again, or at least trying to keep it seem refreshing. So I guess in that regard, that's probably fine, I guess. So anyway, as always, let's talk about the plot. So let's dive right into it, shall we? So here we go. Say that the film starts off pretty well off, so that's a plus in my book. So yes, there's this woman. She's supposed to be of royalty and whatnot, really, really high royalty. So suddenly it's a princess movie from Disney. Yeah, think about that. So he just went there. Anyway, she gets possessed by some alien or whatever, and she definitely is going around warning people about Ghidorah because he's out from outer space and wants to pretty much enslave humanity or whatever. Oh, yes, this woman you get into a lot of trouble. Let's put it that way, folks. Yeah, but this woman as well, she does this whole reporter thing and whatnot. And let's just say, yes, again, the woman will play an important part in the overall story as she attends this session with the UFO Society for television programming. So let's just say things become pretty crazy. And it does give me like a James Bond feel to it in some ways. And yeah, it does have the whole aspect of that. So yeah, this film just becomes even more crazier as a result of that, which I don't mind really. But anyway, and then there's the whole bit with Ghidorah, of course, becoming such a threat for everyone, and of course, even the monsters. We need to get some assistance to help each other out. In this case, and the fairy characters do make an appearance again. So they trying to get Godzilla to help out, but of course Godzilla himself is not really willing to help the humans out because they're always trying to kill them off. I did like how they're going to have some sort of story subplot going on with the human characters rather than just having a bunch of monster fights thrown together. So yeah, they're trying to have a little thing going on with the human characters as well, which does help the film to be more enjoyable, at least for me anyway. So that's a good thing. And this would have marked the first time in the series to feature more than two monsters at a time. So yeah, I guess you can say things got pretty crazy in this film, which I'm pretty fine with since King Ghidorah is actually a pretty damn tough opponent in the film. And oh yes, the whole princess type character, whom I've mentioned a little earlier, does appear to have seemed like she came from, or at least the appearance of it anyway, like a Middle Eastern style nation, kind of a ordeal here, and is heading towards Japan. I guess they're trying to give some sort of interesting story, I suppose, which is fine, obviously. That's the thing is that Mothra is basically sent away from her island, attempt to help the Earth, of course. So, if anything, Godzilla and Rodan are basically forced to fight together, I guess, to defeat this really strong monster, of course. This film was rushed into production to replace another project which fell behind schedule, so in Toho's New Year holiday slate, so yeah, they quickly rushed into production. In some ways, you could tell it was a bit rushed here and there, but overall, I can say that this was a pretty good film as a whole. So I did like the monster designs in this film. So the monster designs were actually rather well done, despite the fact that the budget wasn't really the biggest, especially compared to today's and whatnot. But I still enjoyed it, so it's not much of a complaint, really. Also considered as a sequel to two other kaiju films as well. Can be considered as a sequel to Rodan, which was released previously along with a film of Mothra. Yeah, they were pretty successful, so I guess it would make sense to have them be connected. Would mean that they're sequels to the original Godzilla film. So that's cool. And yes, I recovered the other sequels that already came out, which was Godzilla Rise Again, which eventually got another one, King Kong vs. Godzilla. So yes, even eventually got another one, Mothra vs. Godzilla. All of these I've already covered, of course. So it's also been said that the War of the Gargantuas is also taking place in the same universe as well. But that's another already covered. So yeah, all these films I just mentioned just now are connected to this film as well. So you can say that's pretty cool right on its own right there. So yeah. But the odd thing is that this was never intended to be an expanded universe or of any kind. So yeah, I know it's kind of odd that I would just now say that, because there's been multiple sequels already. So yeah, since this film's proved to be successful, so of course they want to make follow-ups with some stand-up, of course. This could be a good way to have different type of storylines, introducing type characters and whatnot. And that's exactly what they did. Trying to experiment with the ideas and whatnot. And if anything, this film does came off more of a sci-fi film compared to the other movies, which I don't mind really. Even though I'm not really a sci-fi fan, I'm more of a horror movie kind of a person really. But okay, whatever, yes. But yeah, So, in regards to of the special effects department, it's actually pretty good considering the time period. And honestly, can say it's definitely an improvement over what had been shown in the previous film. Well, one of the previous films anyway. So, but at least for this film, the special effects in this one actually was an improvement due to how that it comes off. They were actually putting more of an effort to give you a sense of the characters, the size and whatnot, and not just that with the everything else as well. I did like the fight scenes. Also, the fight scenes were actually pretty good as well. The fight scenes were well constructed, well edited, trying to give you a sense of like this. What's going on seems to be really action packed. Yes, it did. That helped as well in that degree. I did like how they were trying to give these characters like they really don't like each other really. So there's that. And I did like how the fact that in some ways the film does take itself rather seriously. So yeah, it actually does take itself rather seriously. So at least for the most part, I guess you can say for the most part, it does do that. So I can also say that I also appreciate the fact that the human characters actually amount to something. They're not just there just to talk and that's it. So they're not just some throwaway cardboard characters that's just there just for the sake of it. Which is something that I got annoyed with a lot of the fans of kaiju don't really talk about. The human characters are just as important as the monster characters. You do need to have something going on with this film other than just stuff blowing up. Eventually, it would just get pretty boring. Yeah, if I want to see something with explosions and mindless entertainment, I watch Michael Bay's films. The Transformers movies should be more specific. Those had giant things and constant explosions, then explosions, and then more explosions, plus more explosions, and more explosions, and more explosions, and more explosions. This film attempts to have more of a plot than in those films. Yeah, I actually am saying that. So yeah, there's plenty of action to be had. So like I was saying right earlier, this was the first entry in the entire series to feature more than two monsters. So after this film, it pretty much became a trend for these kinds of movies. So which is actually pretty cool, I guess you can say. So this does prove to be an important entry for the franchise in more ways than one. And this was the first entry to actually introduce Ghidorah as the villain here, folks. So that's definitely something there, folks. So yeah, he definitely wants to come around and just rock up everything and whatnot, and it's up to the other monsters to basically stop him. So I guess it does make sense. It does make sense in the context that Earth is their territory, and they have to stop him. So yeah, I can say that this is something this definitely has a pretty cool clothing. Even the clothing itself seems pretty cool. And yeah, you see the woman, she has her own outfit there, but then you compare it to other wardrobe, you're definitely against the sense that it's like having two personalities in one body. So that's definitely pretty cool there. And of course, the other female characters will have their own individual personality as well. So I'm saying that specifically since women do play an important role in these films. How when these feminists complain about film and whatnot, never bring any positive traits of female characters in film at all. You much rather just bitch and moan and complain. While in supporting women's rights in itself isn't necessarily a bad thing, but yes, there's some women out there who do take this way too far. Calling a bunch of men hypocrites, or men in general hypocrites, while not looking upon themselves in their own action. So there's that going on. And like I said, while supporting women's rights isn't necessarily bad, but a lot of women nowadays just took this concept and just twisted it around, which is wrong. It's about human rights, help both genders, and that's the thing with this film. Yes, there's a strong female character. Equal does not mean more, and the film recognizes that. So even the fairy characters are actually female. And also, when you think about it, when it comes to the insect that they worship, Mothra, having her be a woman was intentional due to Mother Nature being like the caring type of thing. So this was deliberate. But even then, the female characters in this film does not have an agenda, does not have any secret thing or hatred towards men. I mean, yes, of course, there are male bad guys in this film. That does exist, but they are not bad guys just because they're men. And they also realize that these characters are also bad. The fairies do want to take these bad guys down, not because they're men, but because rather they do realize that they are dangerous individuals. So of course we're gonna get a gunfight, like was mentioned earlier, kind of like a James Bond kind of a thing. Again, not because the men are evil or anything. I mean, hell, even the good guy character has a gun as well. So he does attempt to protect the fairies as well. Not because the women, not because he has a secret agenda, but rather it's the right thing to do. I mean, hell, Godzilla and Rodan fought each other quite often in this film, not because they're guys. It just proves that Godzilla himself does have a difficulty getting along with anybody, and that's the point. But they do set aside the differences and team up against Ghidorah, whom is also a guy as well. It's not because he's male or anything, but it's rather because he's a threat to the entire world. And yeah, it's funny I have to point that out because I know some feminists might take this out of context. During the 1960s and even up to this very day, women are trying to fight for equal rights for both genders. Funny how a lot of people don't bring that up at all. So I know in some ways I'm going way past the film. I just wanted to clear that up for a moment there, because I know a lot of people, especially nowadays, would take short movies out of context. Those are done quite often, and that's definitely something I've covered before. So anyway, with this film, I did like the fact that the all the scenes, even the destruction scenes, are actually well choreographed. You do see the monsters in this film. I do like the fact that the monsters do have an origin story. I do like how the monsters are supposed to be like a threat to everybody, but there's different plenty of action sequences to be had here. I did like that. So overall, there's more good than bad in this film. I mean, this film isn't exactly perfect, really, but still. If you're a sci-fi junkie for the old sci-fi type movies, if you're not a fan of giant monster movies, but if you're a fan of sci-fi films, especially the vintage sci-fi stuff, I would definitely recommend this one because it does give you the old school vibe of sci-fi movies. So yes, basically centered around the idea that there is this woman whom claims that she's from Venus, telling about these great disasters about to happen, and they seem to be coming true one by one. So yes, Godzilla, Mothra, and Rodan reappear in Japan, of course, while there's a giant meteor that crashes into Earth, and the three-headed space dragon, King Ghidorah, finally is born and then engages in vast destruction. So a lot of the Japanese trademarks are actually destroyed during the movie. So yeah, there's that going on. So as the woman from Venus predictions, I know her prophecies do come true one after another. The Earth monsters must decide whether they're willing to set aside their differences and join forces against the enemy from outer space. So yeah, it gets pretty crazy as a whole, folks. Which I guess I can't blame them, the people behind this film for being, I guess, imaginative. I guess this was definitely a solid film as a whole. So yeah, multiple monsters. That was cool. The tiny fairies, of course, lots of destruction and plenty of fights. So of course, there's definitely something to be had here, folks. The story itself is pretty solid, of course, and I can definitely state that this film does have a pretty solid story. The acting, for the most part, is actually pretty good. The monster designs were actually pretty nice as well. So everyone had their own distinctive look to them, which of course is great. Yeah, I did like the way the characters, these monsters, did look appear in this film. So that's definitely a good thing there. And like I said, at least for the most part, the acting was actually pretty good. So yeah, good acting in a B movie. What do you know? So yeah, I can definitely say that this film is definitely well framed. It's well shot. You get a sense of these characters being large and in charge in a lot of ways. So that's definitely a positive there. So even the lighting itself is pretty good. Yes, this can be considered as a B movie. That's true, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's gonna be garbage. The lighting is pretty good, like I was saying, folks, despite the very low budget that it has. And I can say that it's pretty exciting in its own way, and it's definitely something I wouldn't mind watching again. You can get your hands on it, folks, if you can afford it. That is, I would say definitely give it a shot. This movie does prove to have a better story than any of the Twilight films. That's for sure. Even better than books. Ugh. The less I talk about those movies, the better. They were awful. Anyway, I can say that this film is a good entry due to how the direction that they were going with this movie. Because you don't have to consider the fact that these films, like I said a moment ago, these films were not planned. It's not like how George Lucas planned Star Wars with the sequels and the prequels or whatever, or how the DC expanded universe did it, or how the Marvel films did it. They planned movies ahead of time or whatever. They didn't do that. These films, the people who made these films did not do that. Uh, I know this might be a hard thing to believe, considering the fact that they made multiple sequels, but none of these were planned. None of these were planned at all. Because the thing is that Godzilla was originally supposed to be a one-time thing, a standalone film, and that was it. But they just decided they just decided to make more because for the most part these films were a box office hit, for the most part. But whatever, guys. As long as the story is good, and I can't complain too much, I guess. So I mean, thankfully, I didn't have to watch this film with the cheesy dubbing because for the American version of this film, the dubbing was off. It had one of the worst dubbings I've ever heard for a foreign film. So I like I would say, I'm strictly staying with the Japanese version, of course, and yeah, it's a lot better in a lot of ways. I do like the Japanese version better. The music was actually pretty good. I like the music here. It does give you a sense of like a sci-fi kind of a thing. So that's really good. I like the music. The music is definitely one of the best aspects of this film. I can say that for sure. So it does help trying to give you like a sense of tone, of course, and it does help with the fight scene. So that's definitely something I can give it. I can give it credit for. It would definitely be something like that. So yeah, no complaints in that department. So I can honestly say that I did like the wardrobes that the actors wore and actresses, giving you a sense of the type of movie that this is supposed to take place in. I do like how there's like those multiple location scenes. It's not just all in one spot. It does not take place all in just one spot. So there's just multiple scenes throughout the film that were edited all together. So that was pretty cool. Giving this film kind of like an adventurous type of feel to it, which I did think was actually pretty good. That was a good thing there. So anyway, like I said, while this movie wasn't exactly perfect, some of the parts did come off a bit rushed. So and you can tell. So yeah, overall, it does more good than bad, just despite that. So I would definitely say that it does a good job trying to convey that there's these monsters trying to fight each other, of course. And yes, obviously, there's the human drama. And that's another thing a lot of the American filmmakers tend to not really understand is that when they attempt to do their version of a kaiju feature, is that you have to. I mean, of course, you do have to focus on the monsters. The monsters have their own story. That's the thing. The giant monsters have to have their own story. But then at the same time, so do the humans. The humans do have their own drama as well, whatever that may be. But, okay, the main thing you probably will focus on are the monsters. And the human drama will have to be somehow put into that monster drama. When it comes to the way the American companies would do when they attempt their kaiju movies, they usually flip that around. So I guess it's a culture thing. I guess it's a stylistic change or whatever. But yeah, when the American companies attempt at it, it still doesn't feel the same, really. If I'm gonna be honest here, but whatever. This was a pretty good one. I'll give this film an overall rating of a 7.2 out of 10. It's a 7.2 out of 10 for me. And as always, thanks for watching, and take care. Till next time, see ya. Oh yeah.